Marriage counseling. Just the phrase makes people think of hope, of effort, of two people reaching across a broken bridge to mend it plank by plank. But that wasn't what this was. No, not for us. This was more like a courtroom disguised with throw pillows and soothing wall art. Talia sat with her legs crossed like she was on a daytime talk show, tapping her polished nail against the mug of herbal tea the receptionist handed her on our way in. She didn't even look at me. Dr. Rowan Milner had barely settled into his chair when she launched into her speech, because that's what it was. A speech. Polished, rehearsed, and dripping with the kind of performative pain you learn from watching too many self-help reels on social media. He needs to man up and fight for me, she said, letting the words hang in the room like incense, thick, unnecessary, cloying. I've been carrying the weight of this marriage for years, emotionally, financially, spiritually, and he just disappears into his little world. His books, his lectures, his spreadsheets. The doctor nodded slowly, pen gliding across his pad like he was solving something ancient. I didn't interrupt. I didn't shake my head or sigh or roll my eyes. I just sat there, my hands folded neatly on my lap. Her words didn't sting anymore, not like they used to. Somewhere along the line, they had become just noise. Predictable, hollow, empty of anything but self-serving echo. She kept going. I mean, what am I supposed to do with a man who can't even raise his voice for me? Who never gets angry, never shows fire? I need someone passionate, someone alive, not just this. And then she gestured at me like I was a chair. The therapist shifted his eyes to me then, giving me the floor. I didn't clear my throat or adjust my seat. I didn't do anything dramatic. Just reached into the leather folder I had placed beside me, pulled out a small stack of photographs, and gently slid them across the table toward Dr. Milner. He paused. May I? He asked. I nodded. He picked them up. One by one, his face changed. Calm, then concerned, then visibly pale by the third image. Talia stopped mid-rant. Her eyes darted to his hands. What is that? She asked, her voice cracking slightly. Dr. Milner didn't answer. He just looked at me like he was unsure whether to keep reading or call for security. I knew what he was seeing. Images with timestamps. Emails. Screenshots. All carefully arranged. None edited. No rage scribbled in red marker or messy accusations. Just facts. Dates. Patterns. Receipts. I thought you should both have the full picture, I said quietly. Talia finally reached for the photos, but I had another copy in my bag. I didn't give it to her yet. Not until she asked, What is this? Some creepy PI thing. You went through my phone. No, I said. You handed me your truth, piece by piece. I just paid attention. She stared at me like I'd betrayed her. The irony nearly made me laugh. Why didn't you say anything? She demanded. Why sit there like a robot while I'm trying to fix us? And that's when I looked her in the eye for the first time all session. Because a real man knows when the fight is already lost. Silence. The kind of silence that weighs more than a scream. Dr. Milner put down his pen. Talia opened her mouth to speak, but couldn't seem to find a sentence that wouldn't make it worse. I leaned back slightly, still calm. You wanted me to fight, but you never wanted me to win. You wanted a reaction, a breakdown, something to prove I still needed you, that you still had power. You don't get to cheat and then beg me to yell so you can feel like a victim when I walk away. She blinked rapidly. And you're wrong, I added. I didn't disappear. I just stopped trying to speak a language that only one of us wanted to understand. Dr. Milner cleared his throat and asked if I wanted to continue. I already have, I said. I just needed to say it once. Out loud. So no one could say I never did. I turned to Talia. You say I don't fight, that I'm emotionally sterile. But let me ask you this. If I had screamed, thrown things, demanded your phone, followed you after work, would that have proved I was a real man? Or would it have made me easier to blame? She didn't answer. I stood up slowly, gathered my folder, and placed the second copy of the documents in front of her. I'm not here to yell. I'm not here to beg. I'm here to finish. Dr. Milner nodded solemnly. Would you like to schedule a follow-up? No, I said gently. There's nothing left to follow. And I walked out of that office, not with a bang, not with a dramatic slam of the door, but with silence. Because silence isn't weakness. It's knowing exactly what not to waste another word on. That night felt like someone trying to repaint a burned-down house. She made spaghetti. Not just any spaghetti, her fresh herb, 3-hour sauce version. The one she always used to win me back after an argument or distract me from something bigger. I came home to the scent of basil and garlic drifting through the house, like nothing had happened earlier in that therapy session. Like I hadn't just revealed the truth she'd been hiding behind for months. Talia was humming in the kitchen. Actually humming. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. She wore that lavender blouse I once told her was my favorite. It had soft sleeves and a neckline that used to draw my attention instantly. I remembered buying it for her birthday 3 years ago, back when we still exchanged gifts that meant something. Back when she wore it for me, before it became a prop. She set the table with candles. 2 glasses of red wine. Clinking plates. No apologies. Dinner's ready. She called from the kitchen with her usual fake brightness. Like this was some sitcom, and we'd hit the reset button after a commercial break. I didn't answer right away. Just walked in, loosened my tie, and took my seat like a guest at someone else's dinner party. She plated the food, sat across from me, and smiled like a woman who'd been slightly misunderstood, not exposed. I thought we could just have a quiet night in, she said, twirling pasta on her fork. No tension. Just us. Just us. The phrase didn't mean what it used to. There hadn't been a just us in a long time. Now there was always a shadow in the room. Always another text she was hiding. Always a second script running under her performance. I took a bite. It was good. She knew how to cook. That was never the issue. Looks nice, I said flatly. You okay? She asked, leaning in like she cared. You seemed really calm in the session today. Too calm, actually. She waited for me to explain. I didn't. She reached for her phone. It buzzed just as she touched it. She flipped it over too quickly, screen down. Too practiced. I noticed that. Noticed everything now. Spam, she muttered, brushing hair from her face. Always calling it dinner. I nodded. Sure. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Her eyes kept darting toward me, like she was waiting for me to erupt, to do the thing she said she wanted. To fight. To be angry. To prove her story about the passive husband who never cared. But I didn't play along. I simply finished my food, took a sip of wine, and let her squirm. Then she reached for her phone again, this time trying to look casual. I saw her thumb move with subtle muscle memory, texting someone she knew too well. She tilted the screen just enough to keep it out of my line of sight. But I caught a glimpse. The name wasn't one I recognized. Probably saved under something vague. Could have been Jessica or Dr. Kim. I didn't bother guessing anymore. I had stopped playing detective. I wasn't here to trap her. I was here to observe. She laughed lightly at something on her screen, then locked it again and looked at me like we were in a rom-com. You know, she said, maybe counseling wasn't the right format for us. It's too formal. Maybe we should do something fun together instead. Just reconnect. Reconnecting, now that the rope was already burned to ash. I almost admired her persistence. What are you thinking? I asked, not because I cared, but because I wanted to see what lie she'd try to build next. Maybe a weekend getaway, she said. The lake house is free next month. That lake house, owned by her cousin, rented by couples trying to fix things. A place filled with wine, Instagram filters, and forced affection. I'd seen the pictures. Smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Her idea of recovery. I nodded slowly. I'll think about it. Really? Sure. She brightened a bit. Hope. No. Relief. She wanted me still frozen, still gullible. If I agreed to the lake house, it meant she was still in control of the narrative. That the session earlier was just a bump, not a breach. After dinner, she brought out a slice of lemon cake. I didn't even like lemon cake, but she insisted. I thought we could start fresh, she said as she placed the plate in front of me. No more spying. No more walls. No more lying? I asked softly. Her face twitched, but she smiled through it. Of course. We sat a while longer. She laughed at a meme on her phone and turned it to me. It was a cartoon about marriage, the kind couples share to say, look, we're normal. I smiled. Just a flicker. Not for the meme. For the irony. Her phone buzzed again. She silenced it. Locked it. Moved it away from my side of the table. That's when I knew. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She was rebuilding the stage. Repainting the mask. She wanted to reset the clock, rewind the film, edit the raw footage of our life until she could sell it back to me as something worth keeping. But I'd already moved past that. I cleared the plates. Washed them. Towel-dried each one while she scrolled through her phone on the couch. I caught the faint glow of the screen reflecting in the hallway mirror, her smile shifting with each message. Not the smile she gave me. The other one. Upstairs, I opened the drawer where I kept copies of her texts, the screenshots, the printouts. I didn't hate her. That was the thing. I didn't feel rage. I felt done, finished in a way that no amount of spaghetti or silk blouses could undo. She came upstairs an hour later, crawled into bed like she had every right. No talk, no touch, just silence. I lay in the guest room, watching the ceiling fan spin slow and steady. Thought about how many times I'd ignored my own instincts to preserve something that was already cracked. I didn't leave because of a single moment. I left because of nights like these, where the truth was served with garlic bread and false smiles, and I was expected to forget what I knew. But forgetting is for fools. I wasn't that anymore. There's something unsettling about holding someone's past in your hand, something they thought was erased. Her old iPhone had been sitting in our junk drawer for months, its cracked screen buried under expired coupons, loose batteries, and tangled USB cords. She told me to throw it out twice. I didn't. I kept it quietly. Like instinct told me it wasn't just broken, it was hiding something. I waited until she was out one afternoon, said she had yoga. I didn't ask which studio. I didn't care anymore. I just knew I had 2 hours, maybe 3. I pulled the phone from the drawer, wiped off the dust with the sleeve of my shirt, and stared at the black screen. It looked harmless, like it had no secrets left. But I knew better. Nothing digital is ever truly gone. Not when the person looking knows where to ask. I drove across town to a small repair shop that most people wouldn't notice. The sign was faded, and the window display hadn't changed in years. Inside smelled like solder and old speakers. There was a bell over the door, but it didn't ring when I walked in. It never did. Elliot Brandt stood behind the counter, hunched over a disassembled tablet. He looked up, squinting through thick glasses. "Mr. Bray?" he asked, surprised. I nodded. "Hey, Elliot." He wiped his hands on a rag. "Didn't expect to see you here. What brings you in?" "Laptop issues." I held up the phone. He raised an eyebrow. "That an iPhone 10? Used to be hers." He nodded slowly. "What do you need?" I placed it gently on the counter like I was handing him a live wire. Deleted messages. Photos. Backups. GPS logs. Anything it still remembers. Elliot didn't ask why. He didn't need to. He just studied me for a moment, then said, "I can do that. Might take a few hours." I nodded. "No rush." "You sure you want to know?" he asked, not like a friend, but like someone who understood what came next. "Truth is better than suspicion," I said. He didn't argue. I left him with the phone and walked to a nearby diner. Had coffee. Looked out the window at nothing. When you start digging, there's always a chance you find something worse than you imagined. But I wasn't afraid of worse anymore. I was afraid of staying numb. 3 hours later, Elliot texted, "Done. Come back when you can." I returned to the shop. He didn't say much. Just handed me a USB stick and a printed report. "Most of it's from a backup stored to the cloud," he explained. She thought deleting the app deleted the trail. It didn't. I opened the file on his store computer. He gave me space. There were hundreds of text threads. Some innocent, some private. But one contact had a pattern, frequent messages, always late at night or during working hours. Greg. No last name. Just Greg Redhart. I clicked on the first thread. It started over a year ago. Subtle at first, compliments, late-night questions, jokes she never told me. Then the shift. Photos. Emojis. "I wish you were here. He doesn't even notice me anymore. You make me feel alive." That phrase again. I scrolled further. Voicemails. One where she whispered into her phone, telling him how good it felt to be seen. Another, breathy laughter. He's clueless. Always so polite. It's like being married to a ghost. I sat with that for a while. The GPS logs confirmed locations. Private hotel stays. Unexplained late work nights. Every time she came home to me with spring rolls and tired smiles, she had come from somewhere else, someone else. Elliot stood at a respectful distance, his arms folded across his chest. "There's more," he said, quietly. I turned. Backups had deleted voice memos too. Short ones. She recorded herself. Like audio journals. He handed me headphones. I didn't want to listen, but I did. Her voice filled my ears. Soft. Intimate. Unfiltered. "I sometimes wonder if I married the idea of safety and not the man himself," she said in one recording. "He's kind, but he's not alive. Not electric. With Greg, it's different. I feel like I matter." Another one. "I feel guilty, but not enough to stop." She never meant for these to be heard. But they were. And now I couldn't unhear them. I removed the headphones and placed them gently on the counter. Elliot didn't look away. "Thanks," I said. "I'm sorry," he replied. I nodded, pocketed the USB drive, and left. In the car, I sat for a while without starting the engine. I stared at the steering wheel, trying to decide what I was supposed to feel. Anger? No. Sadness? Not even that. What I felt was clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. Like someone had wiped fog off a mirror and, for the first time, I could see the outline of what had been hiding behind me all along. Back home, she was already there. In the living room. Watching some show with fake laughter and perfect lies. She looked up when I walked in. "Hey," she said. "I was thinking we could. I'm tired," I said. "Gonna shower." She blinked, then smiled. "Long day?" "You could say that." Upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room. Plugged the USB into my laptop. Made copies. Labeled everything neatly. I didn't rage or cry or call anyone. I just filed it all into a folder labeled Truth. The house felt quieter now. Not in a peaceful way, just empty. Like the walls knew what I knew. Like the air had stopped pretending. She didn't ask me where I went that day. She never noticed the absence. But I noticed everything now. Because when you've listened to someone confess in their own voice, in the private corners of a memory they thought they deleted, there's no going back. Only forward. Only through. There's a kind of stillness that sets in when you've already accepted the truth. It's not peace, not quite. It's the space after the wreckage, when the noise is over and all you can hear is your own breath. That's where I lived now. I didn't check her phone anymore. I didn't ask questions I already knew the answers to. Instead, I watched. And when she lied, I let her. Like a child playing make-believe in a room full of adults who already know the game is pretend. That Thursday, she said she was meeting her sister, Janelle, for dinner. She made it sound casual. Last minute. No drama. She even sent me a text with a photo of the menu. Something trendy and overpriced. She said they were doing a little catch-up. "Don't wait up," she added. I didn't plan to. She had no idea I'd already been tracking her phone for weeks. Not through some app or shady device, just through the backup Elliot helped me access. It logged where she went when she used GPS. Simple. Silent. Inarguable. I checked it before I left work. The restaurant she'd mentioned? Not even close. Her phone pinged at the Dorian Hotel, a high-end boutique place downtown. It's the kind of spot where people have business dinners they don't want to explain, or affairs they think they can hide behind dim lighting and valet service. I parked across the street and waited in my car. At exactly 6:38 p.m., I saw her. Hair curled just enough to look effortless. That same lavender blouse again. She always wore it when she wanted to appear soft, innocent, familiar. She walked through the hotel's glass doors like she belonged there. Alone. I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then he arrived. I recognized him before he even reached the entrance. Gregory Hill. Tall, tailored, polished. The kind of man who didn't check his phone twice because he didn't need to. He wore a navy suit and no tie. Confident. Relaxed. I'd seen him in company event photos Talia had shown me months ago. "That's Greg," she had said. Big-time sales lead. Intimidating but smart. Apparently, that wasn't all he was. He stepped through the revolving door and disappeared inside. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I already had what I came for. Instead, I took out my phone and captured the time-stamped footage. Her entering. Him following. Clear shots. High quality. No dramatics. Just documentation. Evidence of a meeting that wasn't sisterly. I sat in the car for a while, breathing. It was strange how calm I felt. No shaking hands. No racing heart. Just quiet. Heavy quiet. When I finally drove off, it wasn't out of rage. It was out of certainty. That hotel lobby wasn't the end of anything. It was just confirmation. Proof that the woman who came home to me each night wasn't coming home from work or dinner with her sister, but from him. I drove to a small Thai place near our house and ordered takeout. While I waited, I deleted old voicemails on my phone. Nothing important, just clutter. I had no appetite for anything extra now. Everything in my life had become about subtraction. What didn't belong? What no longer served? What needed to go? I picked up the food, paid in cash, and drove home. She wasn't back yet. I placed the spring rolls and rice on the counter and went upstairs to change. When I came down, she had arrived. Her coat was off, makeup untouched. She carried a small paper bag from the exact restaurant she said she'd visited. She must have picked it up after leaving the hotel. She was good. Not honest, but good. Hey, she. Sure, I said, opening the spring rolls I'd bought myself. How is she? Talia hesitated. Just for a second. That small blink when a lie tries to grab its footing. She's good. Going through a lot with Caleb, though. Caleb, Janelle's husband. I hadn't heard his name in months. But she knew I wouldn't check. That was her mistake. She thought my silence meant ignorance. But silence is just a mirror. It shows you what people reveal when they think you're not looking. I nodded, took a bite. The spring rolls were still warm. Crisp on the outside. Soft inside. She leaned against the counter, sipping from a wine glass like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't watched her walk into a hotel with another man 45 minutes ago. You seem quiet, she said. I'm tired. She tilted her head. Long day. You could say that. She walked over and touched my shoulder. Soft fingers, careful touch. The kind she used when she wanted to reset the mood. I missed you today, she said. I looked at her. I was right here, I replied. She smiled. No, I mean, us. I miss us. I didn't respond. I simply took another bite. Maybe we should plan that trip soon, she added, voice lighter. Just get away from all this noise. Noise. That's what she called it. I wiped my fingers on a napkin, then stood and picked up the takeout bag. I'm going to bed. She looked surprised, maybe even disappointed. Already. It's been a long day. She watched me walk up the stairs like she couldn't quite figure out what part of the performance went wrong. That was her tell, when she couldn't tell why the scene didn't land the way she rehearsed it. In the guest room, I sat at my desk, opened the red folder where I kept everything. I printed the new photos and tucked them inside with the others. One by one, the puzzle pieces were fitting themselves together. Not to hurt her. Not to humiliate her. Just to free myself. She thought I didn't care. That I was numb. But what she didn't understand was that silence is not the absence of feeling, it's the decision not to waste it. Thursday used to be my favorite night of the week. Back when it meant quiet evenings, warm lights, the smell of rosemary chicken in the oven, and my wife's laugh echoing through the hall, not the cruel version she reserved for others, but the soft one she used with me when we still believed in us. Now Thursdays were something else entirely. She called it Wine Club. That was the innocent label. Just a casual evening with her friends, Bree, Ariel, and Sandra, sharing stories, gossip, and overpriced bottles of Pinot Grigio. I used to think it was harmless. I even picked up the wine a few times when she asked. Thought I was being helpful. But over time, something changed. The giggles grew sharper. The whispers grew quieter. And the way she looked at me the next day, like I was something she'd outgrown, became harder to ignore. I started leaving the house during those nights. Pretended I had errands, or grading to finish at school, or errands that couldn't wait. But the truth was, I couldn't stand to hear them anymore. I couldn't bear the false sympathy, the tight smiles, the way they lowered their voices just enough for me not to hear, but made sure I noticed they were hiding something. I remember the moment I stopped trusting those nights. It was the week after I watched her walk into the Dorian Hotel. She came home from Wine Club that Thursday, tipsy, glowing, and humming the same old tune. She walked past me like I was invisible, her perfume lingering behind her, sweet, floral, and foreign. Something in me clicked. I didn't want to guess anymore. So I didn't. That following Monday, while she was at work, I brought out the folding ladder from the garage and climbed up to the chandelier fixture above the dining table. It was a modern piece. Tasteful, minimalist, just wide enough to hide a small voice recorder. I placed the device carefully behind one of the horizontal bars. No wires. No blinking lights. Just a slim, black cylinder that could record up to 48 hours of conversation on a single charge. I didn't feel like a villain. I didn't feel guilty. I felt tired. Tired of being in the dark while they laughed in the light. Thursday came. I pretended to have a late meeting at school. I texted her around 5 p.m. to say I'd be out until at least 9. She replied with a heart emoji and a have fun. That stung more than it should have. When I pulled into the side street 3 blocks away, I turned off the engine and sat in silence. The house was lit up when I returned around 10. The laughter had stopped. The front room was dark again. She was upstairs, brushing her teeth, acting like the night hadn't happened. I walked in quietly, greeted her with a smile, and kissed her on the cheek. She tasted like wine and fake stories. You smell like sage, she said, half laughing. Been lighting candles again? Helps with grading, I replied. The next morning, after she left for work, I climbed the ladder again, retrieved the recorder, and sat at the dining room table with my laptop. What I heard broke something I didn't know I still had left. It didn't start with malice. It never does. There was laughter, wine pouring, the clink of glasses. Someone complimented the cheese spread. Ariel told a story about her coworker's affair. Sandra bragged about her new yoga instructor. Normal stuff. Until it turned. I swear, Talia said, her voice slurred just slightly. He folds towels like he's proposing to them. They burst into laughter. It's like he's from another planet, she continued. Always so quiet. So polite. I could live 2 lives and he wouldn't notice. You already are, babe, Bree chimed in, followed by howls of laughter. Honestly, Talia went on, he thinks I'm just burned out. That a weekend at the lake will fix everything. I let him believe it. It's easier than explaining how bored I am. You deserve more, Sandra said. Someone who matches you. Someone who makes you feel alive. That word again. Alive. That's how she justified it. Betrayal wrapped in poetic excuses. They weren't just mocking me. They were celebrating it. Making me small in my own house. My quirks, my quietness, my stability all turned into punchlines. And she led the charge. There was no regret in her voice. No conflict. Just glee. That's what stayed with me most. Not the affair. Not the lies. But the joy she took in dragging me through the dirt for laughs. The sound of her laughing with people she called friends, turning me into a joke in the same room where we once danced to jazz at midnight. I labeled the file, Exhibit C, Tuesday Glee. Not for revenge. Not for leverage. Just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. After I saved the file, I stood in the middle of the dining room and looked at the chandelier. It used to be one of her favorite things in the house. We picked it out together at a boutique lighting store downtown. She said it made her feel elegantly modern. Now it held secrets. I made coffee, sat by the window, let the light pour in like it used to. But it didn't feel warm anymore. Just pale. She came home that evening, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted to try a new Korean place for dinner. Sure, I said. We went. We ordered. We talked about TV shows and the neighbor's new roof. Not once did she ask me how I felt. Not once did she check to see if I was okay. She thought she was winning. Thought I was still blind. But I wasn't folding anymore. I was stacking. Quietly. Carefully. Each lie. Each laugh. Each little dig. Placed exactly where it belonged. Because when it was time to leave, I wouldn't scream. I'd simply open the drawer where the truth lived and walk away. And the silence I'd leave behind? It would be louder than anything she'd ever said. I stopped talking first. That's usually how it starts. Not with a fight or a slam of the door, but with silence. A silence that stretches across the kitchen counter, across the hallway, across the bed we once shared. A silence that doesn't need to explain itself. It just is. Like fog after a storm. She noticed it after a few days. You're awfully quiet lately, she said one morning, holding her coffee mug like it was some kind of shield. Is something wrong? I looked up from the newspaper and smiled politely. No. She tilted her head. Are you sure? It wasn't a lie. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just done performing. Done trying to prove I was worth basic respect in a house where I was quietly being erased. That weekend, I moved into the guest room. I didn't announce it. No discussion. Just folded my shirts, carried my laptop, and slid my pillow under my arm like a soldier transferring barracks. She stood in the hallway with a confused expression, as if she wasn't sure whether to be offended or relieved. Seriously, she asked. I paused in the doorway. You said you needed space. That was the last conversation we had that week. I stuck to my new schedule. Wake up at 6. Black coffee. No sugar. Go for a walk. Grade papers. Shower. Work. Come home. Cook for myself. Sleep. Repeat. I kept my world tidy, functional, quiet. There was no yelling, no accusations, no smashed wine glasses or crying in the bathroom. Just order. It drove her insane. You're spying on me, aren't you? She blurted out one night when I passed her in the kitchen. That's why you're acting so calm. I didn't even stop walking. I'm living my life. Oh, come on, she snapped. You haven't touched me in weeks. You moved out of our bedroom like a stranger. What am I supposed to think? I turned and looked at her. Not cold. Not angry. Just steady. Think whatever helps you sleep. That silence hit harder than any insult. She stormed out of the room, slammed the door. I went back to my tea. What she didn't know was that I had long since stopped trying to change her mind. I wasn't waiting for her to see what she'd done. I was documenting. not to destroy her, but to protect myself, to preserve clarity in case anyone ever questioned why I left. The office was my sanctuary. During the day, she used it to log into her hybrid job. But at night, she forgot to log out properly. That's when I installed a screen recorder on the desktop, simple, discreet. It logged her activity when the mouse moved after 8 p.m. Her emails were casual, mostly, but occasionally, she'd slip a flirtatious comment to someone named GH. "Oh, we shouldn't be doing this here" message that she failed to delete. One morning, I came across a calendar invite titled Midday Meeting, Offsite. No location. Just a single line, same room, same time. I didn't save all of it. Just enough. The red box under my desk was filling up. Neatly labeled files. Audio, screenshots, photos, password logs, dates, times. All of it filed not out of revenge, but out of clarity. I needed to be able to look in the mirror and say, "You stayed calm. You didn't guess. You knew." That's what the mirror had become, my judge. It didn't lie. It didn't sympathize. It just reflected. Funny how people say, "Look in the mirror," like it's a metaphor. For me, it became a test. Every morning, I stood in front of it, toothbrush in hand, asking myself, "Are you the man they say you are? Are you really so cold, so lifeless, so easy to forget?" And every morning, the mirror gave me the same answer. No. But I could see why she told people that. It helped her sleep at night. Made her feel like the story she was telling had a good guy and a bad guy. In her version, I was the quiet, boring husband. The man who never showed fire. She left out the part where I gave everything. My time, my attention, my trust. Until she treated it like clutter. Her friends started calling less. The group chats went quiet. Even the wine nights got postponed. I could hear it in her voice when she talked to them. Nervous energy. She knew something had changed, but she didn't know what. One evening, she caught me folding laundry in the guest room. "I miss when you used to fold mine too," she said, leaning against the doorway like a scene from a memory she suddenly cared about. "I stopped when you stopped wearing it home," I replied. She flinched, but she didn't deny it. It wasn't about the shirts. It was about the lies stitched into them. Perfume that didn't belong to her. Lipstick that wasn't her shade. Silence that lasted too long to be coincidence. She left the room without another word. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the audio recorder from her car. Elliot had helped me set it up. It was tucked beneath the driver's seat, far enough back to stay hidden. She drove with the windows up, so the sound was clear. That morning, the recording picked up her call to someone labeled G. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered, then laughed. "Okay, fine, I can, but he's starting to pull away. It's weird. He's not angry. He's just gone." She didn't understand. That's the thing about people like her. They need conflict. They need resistance. They mistake silence for surrender. But the truth is, silence is strategy. It's the final breath before you let go. Later that night, she asked if I wanted to join her for a movie. Some romantic drama she used to claim made her cry every time. "Not tonight," I said, sipping my tea. She looked at me carefully. "Do you still love me?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because some questions deserve to echo. That night, I slept well. Not because anything was resolved, but because the mirror was clean. And when I looked into it the next morning, I didn't see a ghost of a man. I saw someone who finally knew when to stop speaking, when to stop chasing, when to start letting the truth breathe on its own. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it doesn't slam doors or shout names. Sometimes it wears a suit, walks quietly, and drops a plain white envelope into a mail slot. No return address. No fingerprints. Just facts folded neatly inside. It had been 2 months since I started gathering everything. Every moment I stayed quiet, she grew more careless. That's what silence does to the guilty. It tricks them into thinking they're safe. Talia had always been good at hiding things, but even she underestimated how predictable people become when they think you're not watching. That morning, she was all smiles. Coffee in one hand, her laptop in the other. "I have a big call with Greg's team today," she said, already opening her calendar. I didn't respond. She looked up. "Wish me luck." "Good luck," I said, without looking at her. I watched her drive off, car polished, hair perfect, dressed slightly tighter than usual. She always dressed differently when she saw him. A little more effort, a little more lipstick. She never noticed I noticed. The envelope was already packed. I'd sealed it the night before, triple-checked every document inside. Photos of the hotel meetings, voice clips from the car, even 2 chat logs. Elliot helped me recover from the old phone, casual messages between her and Gregory about how they had to keep it low until the promotion came through. The promotion. That's what it had all been leading to. Gregory Hill was being considered for a regional VP role, and Talia was leveraging every connection she had to ride the wave. I knew she believed it would open doors for her too. Maybe a relocation, a new position, a chance to start over without starting from scratch. But that door was about to close. I took a morning drive across town, parked 4 blocks from her company's headquarters, and walked the last stretch in the rain. It wasn't dramatic rain, just that slow, quiet drizzle that feels like the world is sighing with you. I found the corporate HR drop box on the side of the building, just past the visitor entrance. It was marked clearly, anonymous concerns or documentation, internal use only. Perfect. I slipped the envelope in and walked away. No hesitation. No looking back. That afternoon, she texted me a meme. Something about coffee and chaos. I replied with a thumbs up. By evening, her mood had changed. She came home quiet, set her purse down with more force than usual. I was on the couch, reading. Rough day. I asked casually. She kicked off her heels and poured herself a glass of wine. They're doing an internal review, she said. Some anonymous report. HR's going through employee files, looking into relationships between departments. Everyone's on edge. I didn't say anything. She sat across from me. You don't think it's serious, do you? Probably just a compliance check. Maybe, I said. Those happen. She stared at her wine. Greg got called into a meeting with HR today. Private. Unscheduled. Did he say why? He didn't say anything. Just texted me to stay cool. I nodded. Then she laughed, like she was trying to convince herself nothing was wrong. Honestly, this place runs on gossip. I'm sure it's just some intern stirring drama. I didn't respond. She looked up sharply. You're quiet again. Just listening. To what? To how you talk when you're nervous. She went still. Just for a second. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said, turning the page in my book. Just an observation. She drank the rest of her wine and didn't bring it up again. That night, she barely touched her dinner. Said she had a headache. Went to bed early. I stayed up and watched the news, though I wasn't really watching anything. I was just listening. To the silence. To the shift in the air. By Thursday, things had escalated. I knew at the moment I stepped into the kitchen that morning. She was pacing, phone in hand, biting her thumb like she used to do in college when she was caught lying to a professor. They've opened a formal investigation, she said as I poured my coffee. Into what? Into Greg. Into? I don't know. Relationships. Conduct. You mean his relationship with you? She froze, then tried to recover. Don't be dramatic. Not being dramatic. Just specific. She turned away, muttering. I can't deal with this. That makes 2 of us. She grabbed her coat and left without another word. The next day, I received an email at work from an anonymous source. Short and simple. Your documentation was received and escalated. Thank you for your discretion. That was it. No signature. No trace. But I knew. Later that evening, she came home looking like the wind had been knocked out of her. I'm on leave, she said, dropping her bag on the floor. For how long? Until they finished the review. And Greg? She didn't answer right away. Just stood there like someone who'd built a house of mirrors and walked straight into the glass. He's being reassigned, she said finally. Might lose the promotion. They think someone's sabotaging him. I didn't say a word. She sat on the couch and stared at the wall. I don't understand how this happened. I was careful. We were careful. I looked at her, really looked. You weren't careful. You were just lucky I loved you enough not to stop watching. Her eyes darted to me. What's that supposed to mean? It means you lied better than you lived. For the first time in a long while, she didn't have a comeback. No sarcasm. No fake laughter. Just silence. She poured another glass of wine, but didn't drink it. Instead, she stared at it. I don't want to lose everything, she whispered. You already did, I replied. You just didn't notice. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her anymore. And maybe she didn't. Because the man she cheated on would have tried to save her. The man sitting across from her now? He just wanted peace. At first, it was subtle, like the volume knob on her life had been turned down a few notches. Her phone rang less. The group. She noticed it too, but wouldn't say it out loud. Not yet. Talia had always been the center of her little universe. Bree, Ariel, And Sandra worshipped her confidence, her quick wit, the way she could deliver a subtle insult wrapped in silk. She was the one who planned their brunches, curated the Instagram captions, and turned wine nights into confessionals. But after that anonymous envelope reached HR, something began to shift. Not just at work, but everywhere. Bree stopped replying to her Instagram stories. Ariel's likes disappeared. Sandra, once her gossip twin, left a single-word comment on a post about self-care, perspective. That was it. Just that. No heart emoji, no inside joke. Talia showed me the comment over breakfast, hoping I'd laugh with her like old times. "Isn't that weird?" she asked, forcing a chuckle. "What's that even supposed to mean?" I sipped my coffee. Maybe she's reflecting. She blinked. On what? Maybe you should ask her. She didn't. She just stared at her phone for a while, waiting for the old rhythm to return. But the rhythm was gone. Even her yoga instructor, Trisha, the blonde spiritual type who wore crystals and said things like clean energy, only canceled her next 3 sessions. She said she needed space for energetic alignment, Talia muttered one evening, throwing her mat into the closet. Whatever that means. I nodded. Probably means exactly what it sounds like. She glared at me. You think this is funny? No. I think it's natural. What's natural about people turning their backs on you when you've done nothing wrong? You sure about that? She slammed the closet door. But I didn't flinch. I had nothing to slam back. I didn't need to. Her world was unraveling, not because I pulled the thread, but because it was never sewn tight to begin with. People can sense when something's off. They feel when the mask slips. They hear the cracks, even if you whisper. And now that the spotlight was gone, she had no one to perform for. One night, I walked into the kitchen and found her sitting in the dark. No wine, no phone, just her, staring into nothing. She didn't hear me at first. I flicked on the light. She squinted, then looked at me with hollow eyes. Do you think I'm a bad person? It was the first honest question she'd asked in months. I leaned against the counter, arms folded. I think you're someone who got used to being adored. And when that stopped, you didn't know who you were without it. She swallowed hard. I never meant to hurt anyone, she whispered. You didn't think about who you might hurt. That's different. She nodded slowly, like she was finally beginning to understand. Not fully, but the edges were starting to sharpen. The next morning, I caught her scrolling through old photos, her and the girls on beach trips, spa days, selfies and wine bars. She lingered on one picture longer than the rest. The 4 of them clinking glasses, laughing so hard they were nearly in tears. She looked up when she realized I was watching. They were like sisters to me. Until they saw who you really were? No, she said quickly. Until someone made them doubt me. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't make anyone doubt her. I simply gave people space to see. And when the fog lifted, they didn't like the view. She tried to recover the social damage, texting Bree directly. Let's catch up soon, she typed. No reply. She tried Ariel. Sent her a photo of an old inside joke, a coffee cup with the phrase, no regrets, just red wine. Still nothing. Later that night, she slammed her phone on the table. I can't believe how fake they are. All those years of loyalty, and now they just vanish? Like I'm poison or something. Maybe they're just protecting their own peace. She scoffed. Oh, so now I'm the villain. You said it. Not me. That stung her more than if I'd raised my voice. She stood and walked out of the room without finishing her food. I didn't go after her. I cleaned the table, loaded the dishwasher, and then sat by the window, watching the rain. It rained a lot that week. Heavy, steady rain that made the world quieter. I liked it. It fit. She didn't. She hated the gray. Hated that the house felt colder without the constant chorus of her phone. Hated that I no longer looked at her with the same soft eyes. But most of all, she hated that her power, the ability to spin a version of herself that people wanted to believe, was slipping. Even at work, the silence followed her. The leave of absence became indefinite. Her inbox dried up. HR stopped updating her. Her manager stopped CCing her. And Greg vanished. No messages. No explanation. Coward. She mumbled one night, staring at her empty inbox. You built your future on a man who was building his on you, I said. Neither of you thought to check if the ground beneath you was solid. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. The house was so quiet those days you could hear the wind push against the windows. The quiet didn't bother me. It gave me room to breathe, to think, to feel again. But for her, it was a prison. No crowd. No applause. Just the echo of her own choices. A few nights later, I heard her crying in the bathroom. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, aching sobs behind a closed door. I didn't knock. I didn't comfort. Because part of healing, real healing, is letting someone sit in the silence they created. When she emerged later, eyes red, she didn't say anything. She just walked past me and disappeared into the guest room. Not mine. Hers. She was finally the one moving out of the shared space. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled the red folder from the drawer, and opened it one last time. Everything was in place. Neatly labeled. Clear. Organized. And untouched. I hadn't added anything new in days. Because now the world was doing the work for me. I no longer needed evidence. The truth was already loud enough. And the silence? It was justice. It was raining again the day of our final session. Not a storm, not the dramatic kind that shakes windows and demands attention. Just a quiet, persistent drizzle, like the sky couldn't cry hard anymore, just long. I sat in the car for a minute after I parked, watching the raindrops roll down the windshield in slow, crooked lines. One drop joined another, then slid away together. Funny, I thought. Even raindrops knew when to leave. Talia texted me that morning. Are you still coming? I replied, yes. I almost added, don't worry. I won't miss the ending, but I didn't need to say that. The silence between us had already become fluent. It said everything. I walked into Dr. Milner's office at exactly 2:01. He always ran on time. The same faint lavender scent clung to the air. The one from a cheap diffuser on his bookshelf. I remember how Talia loved it during our first few sessions. It's calming, she'd said. Now it made my stomach turn. She was already there when I stepped in. Seated cross-legged in the same armchair she always claimed first. No makeup. No jewelry. Her gray sweater hung loose, like it had stopped trying to impress anyone. Her hair was tied back in a plain ponytail. No curls. No effort. Just a woman who'd run out of stories to sell. She looked up when I entered. Hi. Hello, I said. Dr. Milner motioned toward the seat beside her. Thank you both for coming today. I know this is a difficult space, but I hope we can bring some clarity to where things are headed. I sat down. The chair creaked slightly. Talia cleared her throat. I just want to say something before we start. Dr. Milner nodded. Of course. She turned to me. Not dramatically, not with tears in her eyes, but with the strange humility of someone who wasn't sure if their apology would be accepted but needed to try anyway. I've been thinking a lot these past few weeks, she said, about what I've done, about what I thought I needed, and how I treated you. I didn't interrupt. She inhaled shakily. I wanted you to fight for me. I thought that's what love was. Passion, heat, chasing someone when they pull away. And when you didn't, I thought you didn't care. I thought your silence meant you'd given up. I looked at her. It did. She winced, then nodded. I know that now. She turned to Dr. Milner. I made mistakes. I lied. I crossed lines I shouldn't have. I tried to rewrite the story so I wouldn't be the villain. But the truth is, I was. I was cruel. Dr. Milner remained neutral, scribbling something on his pad. Talia looked at me again. Her voice wavered now. I want to fix this. If there's any part of you that still sees the woman you married, I'm willing to work for it. I'm willing to start over. For the first time since the affair began, I believed she meant it. And yet, it didn't change anything. Because remorse doesn't undo damage. Tears don't rebuild trust. And intentions, no matter how sincere, can't rewrite history. I reached into my leather folder. She blinked. What's that? I pulled out a single sheet of paper, neatly folded, printed in black and white. Divorce papers. Already signed. Dr. Milner looked up sharply. Is this? I placed the document on the table between us and pushed it gently toward him. I think this is the clarity we've both been looking for, I said. Talia's breath caught. She stared at the paper like it was foreign, like she couldn't believe it had been sitting that close to her the whole time. You're divorcing me? She whispered. I already did, I replied. I just needed you to see it. Her eyes shimmered. But I just told you I want to fight for us. You did, I said, my voice steady. But you wanted a man who would fight for you. And I did. I fought through the silence, through the betrayal, through every night you thought I was too passive to notice. I fought by staying, by listening, by gathering truth instead of throwing rage. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I leaned forward slightly. But the thing is, I didn't fight to keep you. I fought to keep myself. Tears slid down her cheeks now, slow and unflattering. She didn't wipe them away. I didn't think you'd actually leave, she said softly. I know. Dr. Milner cleared his throat gently. This is a significant decision. Are you both sure there's no room for mediation? Talia nodded slowly, then shook her head. I don't know, she whispered. But I did. I stood, folding my folder back under my arm. I'll let my lawyer handle the next steps, I said. You'll have time to process. But my mind's made up. I turned to Dr. Milner, thank you for your time. I know we didn't give you an easy case. He offered a sad smile. Sometimes closure is the best outcome. As I reached the door, Talia's voice broke behind me. I never stopped loving you. I paused, hand on the handle. I believe that, I said. But sometimes love isn't enough when respect is gone. She covered her mouth as her shoulders shook. I didn't stay to console her. That wasn't my role anymore. I stepped into the hallway. The air felt different out there, cleaner somehow. Lighter. Like something had been lifted off my back. Maybe it was the decision. Maybe it was simply knowing that I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't burned the house down on my way out. I had walked. Calm. Sure. The receptionist looked up from her desk and smiled politely as I passed. I nodded, returned the smile, and pushed open the door into the rain. It felt good. The rain. Cold, yes, but honest. And as it hit my skin, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. The kind that comes not from victory or revenge, but from finally walking away from a war you never wanted in the first place. There was no parade, no applause, no swelling music as I walked out of her life for good. Just the sound of my shoes on wet pavement, the low hum of the city, and the whisper of rain fading into the collar of my coat. And silence. Always silence. But this silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean. Liberating. I didn't go back to the house that night. I had already packed what I needed the week before and moved it into a short-term rental a few neighborhoods over. A quiet place with creaky wood floors, warm yellow walls, and no shared history in its walls. No echoes of arguments or laughter turned bitter. Just peace. When I got there, I didn't cry. I didn't pour a drink. I didn't even sit down for a while. I just stood in the middle of the living room and listened to the stillness. It felt like breathing fresh air after months underground. I sat on the couch eventually, my coat still on. The clock on the wall ticked softly. No missed calls. No begging texts. Not yet. I knew they'd come eventually, once the reality settled in. Once she realized this wasn't another one of my silent episodes she could outwait. This time, the silence wasn't retreat. It was my answer. A few hours later, my phone buzzed once. Talia, you really left? I didn't reply. She sent another. Can we talk? Still, I said nothing. I'd said everything I needed to say in that final session. Anything more would just become part of her next story, the narrative she'd spin to make herself the wounded party. I wasn't going to help her write that script. The next morning, she called. I let it ring. Then again. And again. By the fifth call, she left a voicemail. Her voice was soft, cracking around the edges. I know I deserve this. I know I broke something I can't fix. But please, don't hate me. Just let me explain. Just let me talk to you. One last time. She didn't get that last time, because I knew her well enough to know what she wanted wasn't closure. It was control. One last thread to pull. I turned the phone off and placed it in the drawer. That day, I went for a walk. The air was brisk, sky overcast, but it felt good against my skin. The streets were lined with trees that had already shed most of their leaves. I watched them crunch beneath my shoes with every step. I stopped at a coffee shop, the kind with handwritten menus and chipped mugs. Ordered a black coffee and sat by the window. The barista smiled when she brought it over, kind, unassuming. She didn't know me, didn't know what I'd walked away from. And that was the best part. I took out my notebook, just a blank one I'd kept meaning to use for lesson plans but never did. Now it would be for something else. Something quieter. Something mine. I wrote one sentence at the top of the first page. You don't have to scream to be heard. And for the first time in years, I believed it. Later that afternoon, I went back to the rental and sorted through the last few things I'd brought. I'd left most of the shared furniture behind. The bed, the dining set, the photo frames, let them sit in the house like ghosts she could explain to herself. What I took were the real pieces of me. My books, a few old records, the ceramic mug I bought in college, and the red folder. Yes, the red folder. Not for leverage. For memory. So I'd never rewrite the past to make it softer than it was. That evening, I finally allowed myself to feel the weight of it all. Not sorrow, no. Not grief either. Just release. The kind that fills the space sorrow once occupied. I didn't hate Talia. That's what surprised me most. There was no fire left. No sharp edges. Just distance. Just understanding. She had wanted something I couldn't give. And when I stopped giving it, she went elsewhere. That was her decision. And this, me, alone, steady, quiet. This was mine. A few days passed before the rest of the world caught on. My colleagues noticed the absence of a ring. A few students asked if I was okay. I nodded. I smiled. I didn't need to explain. People could feel when you were at peace. It radiated. Even Bree sent me a message eventually. Short. Unexpected. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't reply to her either. Not because I was angry. Just because I was done talking about it. Done reliving what had already passed. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not respond. Let people sit with their own echoes. I spent the next weeks rebuilding my life in small, quiet ways. Rearranged the rental furniture. Found a new park to walk through every morning. Joined a weekend book group, of all things. Nothing dramatic. No huge glow-up. No Instagram-worthy transformation. Just living. Just peace. And that, more than anything, was the real ending. Not the divorce. Not the counseling session. Not even the envelope that changed everything. The real ending was the quiet I had earned. The kind that doesn't beg to be understood. That final night in the old house, I remember her saying she wanted a man who would fight for her. And she got one. I fought. But not with fists, or threats, or shouting. I fought by staying when I should have left. By forgiving things I didn't even speak out loud. By holding my dignity in the middle of mockery. By walking away before I became someone I couldn't live with. She thought I was weak because I didn't yell. But silence isn't weakness. It's restraint. It's clarity. It's what a man uses when he knows there's nothing left to prove. So yes, I walked away. Not because I stopped caring, but because I started caring about myself again. And that, finally, was enough.